Alrighty then, hello everybody, I am back with another Mr. Weird Thought topic. I know I haven't done one in lately. Let's just say the reason I haven't done it is because life's been kicking my ass, that's for sure. But the reason I'm doing this video is because not too long ago I did a response in my TikTok, or a stitch in my video in TikTok, where I talked about the Darkverse. And for those who don't know, it's basically, or the original name for it is called the Dark Universe, that Universal was trying to create with using a lot of classic horror monsters that we all know and love. And I will today get into it, talking about about it, how it started, how it ended so early, and giving more my thoughts on it, and et cetera, and also kind of asking the question, will they ever do another attempt with the whole Darkverse, and et cetera. So, yeah. Also, if you just touched on this video and my YouTube channel and don't know what this is, hello, my name is Mr. Weird. This is my segment called Mr. Weird Thought Topic, where I talk about a topic, kind of go into it a little bit information, giving you, as much information needed, and basically giving my thoughts and opinion and my viewpoint on the topic. And of course, this video, like I said, it's going over the whole concept of Universal's Dark Universe. So let's start the video. Alrighty then. Before I start, I want to give a little information about the Darkverse. For those who don't know what the Darkverse is, or I call it the Darkverse, even though the original name is the Dark Universe, it's basically Universal's attempt in creating a shared universe with all the classic iconic monsters, with Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, Frankenstein, and all those iconic classic characters all in one universe, basically owned by Universal. And to give information, I wrote down some notes in my phone to talk about this and give more of my thoughts. Basically, in 2014, or around that time, Universal started giving hints about the Darkverse. Or the and no, yes, I will be calling that instead of Dark Universe. It's much more easier and much more catchier name to it. But the Dark Universe kind of started around 2014 with the movie Dracula Untold, which of course eventually it was the original start of it, but then eventually they kind of changed it, which eventually in 2017 a group of images with Tom Cruise, Johnny Depp, Sofia Boutella, Javier Bardem, Russell Crowe, was shot in an image of them all together with an additional image of the logo of the Dark Universe. And from there, that was the whole concept of creating this universe. But like I said, the movie originally started, and it was created by Alex Kurtzman and Chris Morgan, were spearheading a new project, one that would imagine the Universal's monsters as one cohesive universe, or cinematic universe. And their inspiration, of course, was the coming up universe known as the MCU. And of course, Universal heard about it, and they wanted to do their own spin and take of it. But instead of using superheroes, they wanted to use what they already had, which from the 50s, from the 30s, the 40s, and et cetera, those kind of movies, from the original Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, Frankenstein, Frankenstein's Bride, and et cetera, they had those movies, so they thought, let's use those as the main source of the movies. And of course, kind of the movie that kind of started it, like I said, back to it, was Dracula Untold. The original start for the Darkverse was the movie Dracula Untold, that came out in 2014, who Dracula was played by Luke Evans, which for those who don't know or have never seen that movie is basically kind of a reboot or a retelling of Dracula using kind of the realistic character of Vlad the Impaler, who was a ruler in Transylvania, and etc., who was known to be vicious and, messed up. And of course, that led into the whole concept of Dracula, using inspiration Dracula and stuff like that. Give me 1 second. Yeah. And, so with that movie, it came out in 2014. I saw it, and even my sister, who, gave her thoughts, and she enjoyed that movie, and I did too. It wasn't a terrible take on Dracula, but it was still decent enough where I would say every once in a while I would watch it, and I will say I can kind of see the starting point of the inspiration for the dark verse where, spoilers for a, very old movie in 2014, that it looked like it was leading to something else because Dracula makes his appearance in the modern day, stuff like that, and you can tell bits and pieces that, like I said, it was leading up to something. Which Dracula Untold budget was, for those who were wondering, $70 million, and the worldwide amount it made was around $217 million, I'm just gonna round it up. Basically, $217 million in the U.S. and it made that was worldwide. In U.S. it made $56 million, and international it made 161 million, which for the movie it did not do bad, based on that. So it showed that even though the movie wasn't fully successful with the ratings and stuff like that, they thought, okay, let's try a different movie to start the dark verse. And that movie was The Mummy, that was Tom Cruise, or Tom Cruise was the lead, for that movie, which it came out in 2017, and the mummy, the villain of the character who was the actual mummy character was played by Sofia Boutella. I do apologize. I'm bad at pronouncing names sometimes, but Boutella. Please let me know in the comments if I'm actually saying it right. But yeah, she was the one who played the mummy and stuff like that. And the whole concept of that movie was basically, they found because I've only seen the movie once and I didn't even like that movie, so I wasn't truly paying attention or what I could remember. But to look up more of the premise of the movie, it's basically the whole concept of, they just revived a mummy who she was kind of imprisoned, and kind of her resurrection was her revenge on the world, and etc. That's basically the whole premise of it, and trying to stop the mummy from destroying the world. That's basically it. And the mummy's production and marketing cost was around $345 million. The mummy's grossed around, or it made I don't know if I'm saying that term right, but it made around $80.2 million in the U.S., and in Canada it made $329.8 million, and in other territories or around the world or worldwide in total with everything, it made around $410 million. And the mummy ended up losing $60 to $100 million around there. Probably a little bit less, and based on the reviews, because it gave it a 5.4 out of 10 in IMDb, and in, of course, in Rotten Tomato, which even I don't pay attention or depend on or use. Even I gotta admit, based on the rating, it gave it a 15% in Rotten Tomato, which, yeah. And, of course, in that movie, it basically, that's the movie you can tell it was setting up to something. It was setting up to more movies, because, for example, they released a character in that movie that made an appearance, was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which, for those who don't know, is basically that character that, if I'm not correct, drinks a potion and basically turns into some Hulk creature, basically. And that, for those who were wondering, or I think it's a known fact, that is also the inspiration of what created the Hulk for Stan Lee. And, of course, from that movie, of course it sucked. the whole downfall, the reviews and everything, of course, that basically basically known Universal or gave Universal the fact that, yeah, this is not going to work, and they immediately canceled it. They immediately canceled and said, nope, we're not doing this anymore. We're done with the Darkverse. We're not going to continue. It failed. We're not gonna keep on trying to make movies when we know the beginning didn't even become successful or made people interested in it. Which, of course, which, if I'm not correct, there was a lot of also other movies that they also canceled, and, because I have a list of some of the movies that they canceled, and supposedly there was a plan to make a Van Helsing movie, who was one of their thoughts of playing was Channing Tatum. Yeah, imagine him playing Van Helsing. Not a bad choice, but I don't know. Compared to how the amazing actor who played Van Helsing in his own movie, yeah, there was no way they could compete with that based on, even I can tell by that. They also were planning to make a Dracula Untold sequel. They were also going to plan to make a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movie. Invisible Man played by Johnny Depp. The Creature from the Black Lagoon, a Wolfman movie. The Bride of Frankenstein, who was one of their thoughts they were going to choose to play the Bride of Frankenstein's monster, was Angelina Jolie, who was also going to have Javier Bardem as the Frankenstein's monster, who was going to appear as well in that movie. And eventually there was a concept that they were going to create a movie called The Dark Army, which was going to join some of the monsters in one movie. Basically, I'm guessing the monsters that they probably showed and make it into all of them joining together or something like that in a kind of movie. But, of course, since, The Mummy failed, a lot of the movies either changed, were canceled, altered, and stuff like that. For example, one of the movies that was altered was The Invisible Man that came out in 2020. It was basically like the replacement of Johnny Depp's being the Invisible Man. And I saw that movie, and I'm going to be honest, that was a good movie. For a standalone Invisible Man and stuff like that, not being, anything too fantasy or, unrealistic, it was a pretty good movie. And maybe one day I'll talk about that movie. But that movie did enough where that was successful. That did its thing. That standalone was successful, and stuff like that. And based on all this, based on everything I just told you, and basically using the failure of one movie, yes, I don't blame them for pulling back and creating this universe. Even though, like in my TikTok, I made a comment where I said I wish it would have been successful, only because I am a big fan of some of the horror classics. Like, I am a big fan of sometimes how they do Dracula. I am a big fan of how they do, or how they did, or sometimes the lore of the Wolfman. I am a fan of sometimes Frankenstein and other kind of monsters. And, getting to see a universe where they're all connected kind of sucked, because I would have loved to see that, or at least have each monster make an appearance, cameo, fights, or whatever. But the way I would have done it, to be honest, and the reason I think it failed, was because I think they tried to rush it as much as they can to compete immediately with the MCU. Because a lot of studios wanted to make their own universe inspired by the MCU. Which, of course, the MCU show has to been successful. It's made millions. It's made billions. It's constantly been successful until recently, which I'm thinking of making another video to talk about that. But you get what I'm trying to say. And going back to, why it failed is because they rushed it. When I watched that movie, it felt like, yes, you could tell that they were building up something interesting. But it's like they were already creating a universe without actually explaining it, already slowly building it up, and probably catches people's attention. Because I'm sorry, the movies that they should have started is maybe the main three: Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman. Even Van Helsing. which we had a movie with all those characters all together with Hugh Jackman in the Van Helsing movie, which it had Dracula, Frankenstein, Dracula's wives, and some werewolves and stuff like that, which showed that could be possible. That could be successful if done right, done with an interesting story, a story that people will catch their attention, stuff like that. And, like I said, it sucks saying that, but like the way I would have done it is starting those characters, because Dracula is a very iconic character. And the movie I would have chosen was Dracula Untold, because that wasn't a terrible movie. It's still a decent movie. It's still a good, for me, a good story for Dracula. We're using the concept of what made Dracula, using it based on a real person and stuff like that. And the way they ended the movie got my curiosity, saying, I would love to see more of this story, of this Dracula. Even though it's not the best, it's, for me, one of my favorites. I will admit. And from there, they could have done then The Wolfman. The Wolfman done its own standalone movie where you can tell it's referencing maybe the event of Dracula Untold, but that's all it's doing, referencing and, having Easter eggs. From there, they go to Frankenstein. From Frankenstein, they tell an interesting story that's going to catch our attention and continue giving us the love of, the monsters that we all grew up and love. And especially respecting and giving iconic love to all those iconic black and white monster movies that every person wants to use inspiration from. From there they can do maybe Frankenstein's or The Bride of Frankenstein. From there they use The Invisible Man. From Invisible Man to this, and etc., to sure. Eventually we can have movies where they're all joining together. But I don't think it should be like an Avengers movie where they're getting all the monsters. I believe some monsters should stay villain. Some monsters should be anti kind of heroes or anti-villains. And some characters should, stuff like that. Where at first Dracula's evil, then he becomes anti-hero. He's only helping because it's whatever. Or this character's, and it still catches our attention. And I believe that's what they should have done. Slowly gave each other a story where, and it maybe have in each movie one character, which it could be Van Helsing, maybe it could be the daughter of Van Helsing, or it could be somebody like similar to Van Helsing, passing the generations, because I bet you each movie is going to be taken on a different era of time. Maybe this version will be taken a little years after the Dracula Untold. This movie is going to take maybe 100 years after this movie and stuff like that, where we have character, or even have a character that's immortal in some sense, to basically try to hunt these monsters down. Or something like that, where it still tells us these movies are connected, but they're still focusing on the story, these characters, and that's about it. Like I said, that's what the concept should have been about. That's what it should have done. That's how they, in my opinion, should have built it up. Just giving us first characters that we want to see, stories that will catch our attention, and then maybe, like I said, having a cool build-up where these monsters are appearing in each other's movies. But also having a purpose or a reason for these characters not to show up in each movie. Not just to add them. Have a reason to add them, if that makes any sense. And I believe, like I said, that was the failure of the whole Dark Verse. Kind of building it so fast to compete with the MCU without realizing, how are we going to do this the right way? How are we going to build it up and make sense? Because I'll be honest, yes, it's not only how they did it, it's the movie The Mummy sucked. And plus, we got to realize, they probably had to also realize that they already had a Mummy movie that was very successful, that had big fans, had a franchise and love, which had Brendan Fraser in it. Had 3 movies. All 3 movies aren't the best, but at least they're all good where, people still enjoy them. Especially the first 2. And even I will admit, it's probably going to be hard to compete with them. The only way they would have competed is if they made sure they let people know that this is not connected to this. This has nothing to do with this, and we're telling a different story that's more, at least somewhat interesting, and stuff like, and let them know, be honest, that we're trying our try best to make this as interesting. And we're gonna pay respect to this movie, to the movie that it was also based on and inspired. And stuff like that. And I'm gonna be honest, I haven't seen that Mummy movie since the Tom Cruise one that it came out. I watched it and I was like, no, it's not for me. I like the concept. Don't get me wrong with adding other characters. Dr. Jekyll. I think Dr. Jekyll, if I'm not correct, that's his name. I see that's how much Yeah, Dr. Jekyll, and kind of also showing I think Mr. Hyde as well. But that character in general in that movie, sure, it made sense if there's a purpose for adding him. But in reality, I felt like they just added him just to add him. If that makes any sense. But that also leads to the whole question: after the failure, will they try again? Do you think they're going to try again? And my answer is, I think they're always going to try. They're always going to find a way to try to make the Darkverse of what it was trying to be. Will it be the same concept as they first started? No, I don't think so. Will it ever be successful? Maybe, if they get the right people to tell stories, to get the right concepts, and make the movies in a way where it just shows that they're really loving the whole concept of Dracula. Like, if I'm not correct, you could tell Universal's kind of trying, because with the whole movie Renfield, I think Renfield, which is also Nicolas Cage plays as Dracula, which I haven't seen, which it didn't catch my attention, but I might give it a shot to see if there's any hints of the Darkverse still being made. There's still attempts at making it or something like that. And like I said, I still hope that we get it. As long as they do it right. Because like I said, they had a movie, Van Helsing. That was a whole bunch of monster movies, characters in one movie. They had Van Helsing. They had Dracula. They had a bunch of werewolves. They had Frankenstein. And I will be honest, that movie, I wish they did a sequel. Maybe that should have been the starting point for the whole. But nope. But like I said, it is possible with that movie. They just need to do it right. And do it where, stop trying to compete with the MCU and just do its own thing. If that makes any sense. But like I said, will they ever do it? I don't know. I hope they do. I hope they give it one more shot. Just take their time and tell stories and then slowly build up something cool or interesting. But that's all I'm going to end it with. I don't want to keep on repeating and talking and talking and talking. The only thing I want to ask is, give me your thoughts on the whole Darkverse and stuff like that. And do you think it will ever appear again? Do you think they're going to try again or stuff like that? Or do you think it's always going to be unsuccessful because nobody cares about that? Nobody cares about Dracula anymore because it's always been retold in so many ways that nobody cares about the werewolves or the Wolfman. Nobody cares about Frankenstein. Or do you think there's still a fan base for those characters to tell a story? Because I would support it. I would love to see it. Still have that horror, but still have that, concept that's, yes, I want, this looks interesting. This looks good, But, like I said, let me know. And that's more of my thoughts. That's my opinion, and that's as much as information I could search up. A little bit more of the Darkverse to help you out. If you want to do your own research, go ahead. Understand the whole the Darkverse. I used a couple websites to help me, look it up and stuff like that. But, yeah, and it's fine if you disagree with me. It's fine if anything I said, and let me know if you want me to review some of the movies I mentioned, like Dracula Untold, Renfield, or The Mummy, and ask the question, why did it suck? Because I haven't watched it in a while, and I might rewatch it just to explain why this movie sucked and why it sucked. But yeah, anyway, like I said, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know what other topic you want me to talk about, whether it's nerdy or just in general. But like I said, thank you for watching, and like I always say, I'm weird. Don't judge.